Welcome to Turkey, a country that wrote history itself. Older than any memory, temples that watched gods come and go, stones older than civilization itself, and cities in which millennia lie stacked one upon the other. Here began what we call culture. Join us today through the wonders of Turkey. Turkey measures almost 800,000 square kilometers. Only around 3% of that lies in Europe, a narrow tip in the northwest known as Thrace. Around 86 million people live here, more than 15 million of them in Istanbul alone, the only metropolis in the world that stands on two continents. Four seas enclose the country: the Black Sea, the Sea of Marmara, the Aegean, and the Mediterranean. Over 7,000 kilometers of coastline. In the east, the land rises beyond 5,000 meters to Mount Ararat, where legend has Noah's Ark run aground. But the real distinction lies in the ground. Far to the southeast, near the Syrian border, stands the oldest known place of worship built by humankind. 11,500 years old, 6,000 years older than Stonehenge, erected by people who knew neither pottery nor farming and who buried it again centuries later. Two of the seven wonders of the ancient world stood on Turkish soil, but more on that later. Between the four seas, the country divides into 7 regions, from west to east. The first lies directly between two continents, in a region that never had to choose. The Marmara Region is the crossing point from Europe into Asia, and that is exactly where its density comes from. Byzantine, Ottoman, and modern heritage do not sit side by side here, they sit on top of one another, layer upon layer. In between, the Sea of Marmara, wooded hills, small islands, and 2 straits that have been fought over for 3,000 years. Everything begins where the world divides. Istanbul is the largest city in Europe and at the same time the largest city in the world to stand on 2 continents. Around 16 million people live here, but the number says little. What defines this city is its position, a waterway some 30 kilometers long, at its narrowest barely 700 meters wide, linking the Black Sea with the Sea of Marmara and separating 2 continents. Greek settlers named their colony Byzantion. The Romans turned it into Constantinople. The Ottomans made it their capital. For almost 1,600 years, this place was the seat of 3 successive world empires, which is why almost nothing here can be traced to a single era. Beneath Ottoman foundations lie Byzantine walls, beneath those Roman cisterns, and above it all, apartment blocks from the 1980s. The Bosphorus is not a backdrop, but a commute, a trade route, and a border all at once. Freighters from Odessa pass 19th century wooden villas standing half in the water. Ferries cross their course, overloaded with commuters, gulls, and the smell of tea from tulip-shaped glasses. Cross from Cappadocia to Eminönü in the morning, and you change continent in 20 minutes. Two bridges and a tunnel connect the shores. The ferry remains the most honest form of transport in this city. On the European shore, on a hill above the Golden Horn, stands the building that has outlasted everything. The Hagia Sophia was raised in just 5 years and completed in 537. For almost 1,000 years, it remained the largest church in Christendom. Its dome floats 55 meters above the floor and looks from below as though it were suspended, an effect created by 40 windows at the base of the dome. The speed came at a price. The first dome collapsed in an earthquake after barely 20 years and had to be rebuilt at a steeper pitch. In 1453, the church became a mosque. In 1935, a museum. In 2020, a mosque again. Few buildings anywhere have changed their meaning so often and lost so little of their effect. Inside, golden mosaics of Christ and Arabic calligraphy the height of a man now share the same light a few meters apart. A few steps further on, Topkapi Palace begins. For 400 years, an empire was governed from here, one that at times stretched from Budapest to Baghdad and from Algiers to the Persian Gulf. The palace is not a single grand facade, but a sequence of 4 courtyards that grow quieter the deeper you go. The imperial council met beneath a latticed window, behind which the Sultan could listen unseen. Further in lies the harem, a labyrinth of courtyards and chambers whose walls are clad entirely in Iznik tiles of blue, turquoise, and coral red. At the very end comes a terrace from which the Sultan could look out over 3 waterways at once: the Golden Horn, the Bosphorus, the Sea of Marmara. Stand there and you understand the geography of this city in a single moment.
On the other side of the Golden Horn, a round tower rises out of the sea of houses. The Galata Tower dates from 1348 and was built by Genoese merchants who maintained their own trading colony here. 67 meters high, with a conical roof recognizable from every angle of the city. Legend has it that in the 17th century, a man leapt from its gallery with homemade wings and glided across the Bosphorus. The story has never been proven. It is still told today. And then there is the place where Istanbul is at its loudest. The Grand Bazaar was founded shortly after the Ottoman conquest in 1461, at first as a stone market hall for textiles. From there, it kept growing, lane by lane, until a covered labyrinth of more than 60 streets and several thousand shops had taken shape. Its layout follows no plan, only trade. Entire lanes still belong to a single craft. Goldsmiths, carpet dealers, lamps of colored glass, mountains of spices in open sacks. Go in for the first time, and you lose your bearings within minutes. And that is part of the system. Towards evening, the call to prayer begins at one mosque, is taken up by the next, and the one after that, until hundreds of voices drift across the rooftops, slightly out of step with each other. Beneath it, the traffic runs on. Ships' horns sound from the water. Gulls circle above the ferries. Istanbul cannot be grasped in a single day, nor in a single chapter. But the story of this empire does not begin here. It begins 100 kilometers further south, at the foot of a mountain. In 1326, the Ottomans take a Byzantine city and make it their first capital. Bursa lies on the slope of Uludağ, at over 2,500 meters, the highest mountain in the region, and in winter, a ski resort. The epithet, "the Green," makes sense the moment you step out of the traffic and into the courtyards. Cypresses, water basins, plane trees, shade. Bursa was the end point of the Silk Road. Cocoons were auctioned in the historic trading houses, and in some of them, silk is still sold today. Early Ottoman architecture shows its calmest form here. Blue-green tiles, clean domes, nothing overloaded. This is what a world empire looked like before it became one. Seven kilometers to the east lies a village that time skipped over. Kumalakazuk consists of around 270 houses from the 14th century, many of them still lived in. Narrow cobbled lanes, overhanging upper stories, facades in ochre, blue, and rose. It feels not like a museum, but like an afterthought. Washing hangs between the houses. Women sell mulberries in front of the doors. Between Bursa and Istanbul, there was a second capital, today on the border with Greece and Bulgaria. Edirne was the center of the empire for almost 90 years, and that period left behind a building many consider the finest in all Ottoman architecture. The Selimiye Mosque was completed in 1575. Its architect, Mimar Sinan, was over 80 and called it his masterpiece himself. 4 minarets, each more than 80 meters high, stand around a single dome resting on 8 piers. Sinan had a concrete goal. He wanted to surpass the span of the Hagia Sophia. The result is an interior without a forest of columns, bright and almost mathematical. And then, Edirne has something that has nothing to do with stone. Every summer, men compete here, oiled from head to toe with olive oil, wearing nothing but heavy leather trousers. Kırkpınar oil wrestling has been held since 1362, making it the oldest continuously staged sporting contest in the world. Some bouts can last for hours. In the west, the sea narrows again. The Dardanelles are 61 kilometers long and at their narrowest, barely over a kilometer wide. Whoever controls them controls access to the Black Sea. That single fact explains almost everything that has happened here in 3,000 years. On the southern shore lies a mound called Hisarlık. For a long time, Troy was regarded as pure poetry. Then, from 1871, a German merchant dug into this mound and struck walls. Today, 9 settlement layers, lying one above the other, have been documented, covering some 3,000 years. The site is not a postcard motif, but a cross-section through time. Of the Homeric War itself, there is no proof, only burn layers and destruction horizons that fit the story. On the opposite side of the strait lies the Gelibolu Peninsula. In 1915, Allied troops landed here to take Istanbul and force the Ottoman Empire out of the war. They never got beyond the coastal slopes. The battle lasted 8.5 months, and hundreds of thousands on both sides were wounded or killed. A then-known lieutenant colonel named Mustafa Kemal led the defense on one of the defense sections, and the reputation he won here carried him all the way to the head of the Republic. Today, the peninsula is a quiet place. Pine slopes, rows of graves, Ottoman cemeteries and memorials to Australians and New Zealanders buried 12,000 kilometers from home. Every year, on the 25th of April, their descendants come here. That former enemies remember together on this strip of coast is one of the more remarkable chapters in military history.
From here, the coast leads south. The climate turns milder, the earth drier, and marble columns suddenly rise from the fields. On the west coast, the rhythm of the country changes. The Aegean is shaped by Greek and Roman antiquity, and the density of its ruined cities is matched almost nowhere else on Earth. 2 of the 7 wonders of the ancient world once drew their visitors here. Turkey's 3rd largest city lies at the end of a long bay and is considered the most Western in its thinking. Izmir is ancient Smyrna, one of the cities that claimed to be the birthplace of Homer. Little of that past remains, but all the more of the present. Along the cordon, the broad waterfront promenade, horse-drawn carriages and parpets pass people waiting in the grass for the sunset. On Konak Square stands the ornate clock tower of 1901, surrounded by pigeons and waiting ferry passengers. 80 kilometers to the south lies perhaps the most famous ancient city of Asia Minor. In Roman times, Ephesus was the capital of the province of Asia and counted more than 100,000 inhabitants. The marble road runs between rows of columns down to the Library of Celsus, whose 2-story facade was built around the year 117 as tomb and library in one. Up to 12,000 scrolls are said to have been stored inside. Further back, the Great Theatre opens up for around 25,000 spectators, in whose tiers every word can still be understood today. Of one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, almost nothing remains. The Temple of Artemis was once 4 times the size of the Parthenon. Today, a single re-erected column stands in a marshy field, with storks nesting on top of it. In the hills above lies Şirince. Greeks lived here until 1923, then left the village in the course of the population exchange. What remained were stone houses with wooden balconies, narrow lanes, and a reputation that still holds. Fruit wines of pomegranate, mulberry, and melon, poured straight from the barrel. Further north, on a mountain above the town of Bergama, sits an acropolis that once governed a great power. In the 2nd century BC, Pergamon was one of the most important cultural centers of the ancient world. Its library was regarded as the 2nd largest after Alexandria. And when Egypt eventually stopped supplying papyrus, an alternative made from animal skin was developed here. The word parchment still carries the city's name. The theatre of Pergamon is the steepest of the ancient world. 80 tiers climb a slope, and the view drops almost vertically into the plain. Below lies the Asklepion, one of the first health centers in history, where patients were treated with water, mud, music, and the interpretation of dreams. The famous Pergamon altar has not stood here since the late 19th century, but in Berlin.
On the Cheshmeh Peninsula lies a place made of stone houses, bougainvillea, and wind. Alachata was a Greek wine-growing village before it became one of the country's best-known coastal towns. Pale natural stone, blue shutters, lanes so narrow that 2 tables side by side fill them. Today, its picturesque looks draw more and more visitors to the small town. Off the coast, a steady northerly wind creates ideal conditions for surfing, in a shallow bay where the water stays hip-deep for hundreds of meters. Old windmills on the hill are a reminder that people here knew how to use this wind long before the surfers arrived.
And then that white slope, which from a distance looks like snow on a summer mountain. Pamukkale, the cotton castle. For thousands of years, calcium-rich thermal water has emerged from the ground here, flowed over the edge of the slope, and deposited calcium carbonate. Layer by layer, terraced basins formed, stepped like a frozen waterfall, and filled with warm, turquoise water. The slope may only be entered barefoot. Directly above the terraces lie the ruins of Hierapolis, a Roman spa town founded precisely because of these springs. The sick came from far away, and many stayed for good. The necropolis of Hierapolis is one of the largest in the ancient world, with over 1,000 graves lining the access roads. About 100 kilometers further on lies an ancient city that many visitors never reach, even though it is better preserved than almost any other. Aphrodisias owed its wealth to a marble quarry outside its gates, which gave rise to a school of sculptors whose work traveled as far as Rome. The stadium held around 30,000 people, a complete ring of seating in the open field. At the southern tip of the region, the Aegean gives way to the Mediterranean. Bodrum is ancient Halicarnassus and was home to another of the Seven Wonders. The mausoleum of King Mausolus was so impressive that his name became the generic term for monumental tombs of this kind. Earthquakes destroyed it in the Middle Ages. Its stones were not lost, however. From 1402, the Knights Hospitaller built them into a fortress above the harbour, which today houses one of the most important museums of underwater archaeology in the world. The coast further east is among the most photographed in the world. At Uludeniz, a narrow spit of shingle pushes out in front of a sheltered lagoon, and behind it lies water in a shade of turquoise that people regularly assume has been faked. The name means Dead Sea and describes not lifelessness, but the perfect stillness of the bay. Directly behind it, Babadar rises to almost 2,000 meters. Paragliders launch from its ramps every day, circle above the lagoon, and land on the beach 40 minutes later. It is considered one of the best launch sites in the world because almost everything comes together here: altitude, reliable thermals, and a landing area right by the water. A few kilometers further on lies Fethiye. Lycian rock tombs are cut into the cliff above the town, the largest with a complete temple facade from the 4th century BC. From the harbour, boats run to Butterfly Valley, a gorge between vertical walls that is reachable almost only by water. And now to that village whose inhabitants disappeared in a single day. Kayakoi lies in a hollow behind the hills of Fethiye. Around 500 houses stand on a slope here, along with 2 churches, chapels, and cisterns. Not one of them is inhabited. Greek-speaking Christians lived here until 1923. After the Greco-Turkish War, both states agreed on a population exchange in which more than 1 million people had to leave their homes. New residents never came in sufficient numbers. What remains is a ghost town without roofs, door frames without doors, staircases leading nowhere, fig trees in living rooms. At the delta of the Dalian, flat boats glide through a labyrinth of reeds. In the rock face above sit tomb facades from the 4th century BC. as though stamped into the stone. They belong to the ancient city of Kornos, once a harbor, today cut off from the sea by alluvial land. At the end of the delta lies Iztuzu, one of the most important nesting sites of the loggerhead turtle in the Mediterranean. Further east, on the Gulf of Gurkova, lies Akyaka, known for its wooden architecture in the Muğla style with far-projecting roofs. The Azmak River emerges from the ground so clear that the bottom is still visible several meters down. In the afternoons, a strong wind reliably drops into the bay, which has made the town a fixture for kite surfers. From here, the Aegean disappears, and another sea takes over. In the south, a high mountain range meets open water head-on. Ancient cities stand not on plains, but on cliffs, in gorges, or directly in the surf. Two places in this chapter are exceptional even by Turkish standards. One is a city that Alexander the Great turned away from without taking it. The other is a lake whose shores NASA has compared to a landscape on Mars. The largest city on the coast lies on a limestone terrace 40 meters above the water. Antalya is a city of millions and a transport hub, but its core is small and old. Kaleci consists of winding lanes, Ottoman wooden houses, and an ancient round harbor where excursion boats now moor. At the edge of Kaleci stands a three-arched marble gate, erected around 130 AD in honor of the Emperor Hadrian. Deep grooves left by centuries of traffic can still be seen in the stone slabs beneath the arches. Hadrian himself came to Atalaya, as it was then called, on one of his extensive journeys through the Roman Empire. A few kilometers to the east, the Duden plunges over the roughly 40-meter cliff edge directly into the Mediterranean. The lower Duden waterfall is best seen from the sea. From a boat, you look back at the pale limestone coast, over whose edge the water falls straight into the sea. Anyone who wants to understand why the region around Antalya was so significant in antiquity will find much of its history in the city's archaeological museum. The collection of monumental Roman sculpture from nearby Perg is particularly impressive. Many of the pieces were discovered during excavations in the baths and public buildings of the ancient city and depict emperors, gods, and figures from Greek mythology. Because so many of the statues are exceptionally well preserved, the museum today holds one of the most important collections of Roman sculpture in Turkey. In the hinterland around Antalya lie three Roman cities, which together give a complete picture of everyday life in antiquity. Perg, which we have just mentioned, begins with a Hellenistic twin-towered gate and opens onto a colonnaded street with a water channel once running down its center. Shops to the left and right, plus a stadium for 12,000 spectators. Aspendos has the best preserved Roman theatre in the world. Built in the 2nd century under Marcus Aurelius, it holds around 15,000 people, and it has not been reconstructed. It simply never fell into ruin. Stage wall, tiers, and entrances all stand complete. Side lies on a headland, and its best-known image appears in the evening. 5 re-erected columns of the Temple of Apollo at the outermost point, and behind them, nothing but sea. In antiquity, the place was a significant harbor, today a small coastal town in which ruins and restaurants merge into one another. a setting for one of the finest sunsets in Turkey. "35 kilometers northwest of Antalya, at over 1,000 meters, lies the city we announced at the start of this chapter. Termessos was built by the Pisidians on a mountain saddle between steep rock faces. When Alexander the Great passed through Anatolia in 333 BC, he left it alone. Its position made a siege so hopeless that he moved on, something that rarely happened on his campaigns. Scattered across the slopes lie hundreds of sarcophagi, broken open and shifted by earthquakes, lids at an angle in the grass, roots pushing through the stone. Further east, the Köprüçay has cut 14 kilometers deep into the limestone. The Köprülü Canyon is above all rafting country today, but its most impressive structure dates from Roman times. An arched bridge 27 meters above the water, standing in the same place for almost 2,000 years. Some 300 kilometers further east, on the coast of Cilicia, a castle stands in the water. Kızkalesi sits on a small island 200 meters from the beach, and its walls begin where the waves end. In the mountains behind it, something older is hidden. In a gorge near Adam Kayalar, life-size figures are carved directly into the vertical rock face. Men, women, warriors, a child, a goat. They hang there without barriers, without a ticket office, without signage. In the hinterland, at over 1,000 meters, lies a lake with white shores. Lake Salda is up to 190 meters deep, and its bed consists of hydromagnesite, a pale mineral formed by microorganisms. Where this sediment washes ashore, dazzling white beaches form, with the water lying against them in a strong turquoise. The combination is so unusual that NASA researchers have studied the lake. Similar deposits have been detected in Jezero crater on Mars, the landing site of the rover Perseverance. Stand here and you are looking at perhaps the closest earthly equivalent of a landscape 200 million kilometers away. At the far east of the region, near the Syrian border, lies a city that is among the oldest in Christianity. Antakya is ancient Antioch, once one of the largest cities in the Roman Empire, and it was here, according to tradition, that the followers of Jesus were first called Christians. Cut into the slope above is a cave church, the Grotto of St. Peter, one of the oldest Christian meeting places of all. In February 2023, a severe earthquake destroyed large parts of the old town. Reconstruction is underway, and historic buildings are being secured stone by stone. Anyone who comes here today sees a city in transition, and therefore a place doing exactly what it has had to do again and again throughout its history. From the coast, the route now leads inland, up onto a high plateau. There, the strangest landscape in the country is waiting. Beyond the Taurus, the Anatolian highland opens up. Here, in central Anatolia, the climate is continental, the summers hot and dry, the winters harsh. Culturally, this region is the heart of Anatolia. Here lies the capital. Here lies the spiritual center of the Mevlevi order, and here lies a landscape that nothing else on earth imitates. When the Republic was proclaimed in 1923, the choice of capital did not fall on Istanbul. Ankara lay inland, far from any coast and any front, and that was precisely the point. Within a few decades, a provincial town of 30,000 inhabitants became a city of more than 5 million. Above the city stands Anıtkabir, Ataturk's mausoleum. An avenue of stone lions leads to a square of enormous proportions, flanked by angular colonnades, deliberately sober, almost severe. The rest is considerably older. The citadel stands on Roman and Byzantine foundations, and the city holds several important museums with testimony from millennia of Anatolian history. From Stone Age finds to the finely worked reliefs and sculptures of Anatolia's great empires. Nallihan lies around 160 kilometers from the center of the capital. Millions of years of deposition and erosion have created striking hills and rock formations here, whose strata appear in strong shades of red, orange, yellow, brown, and white. The different colors come from various minerals and sediments in the rock and make the landscape look almost surreal in places. In the Nallihan Bird Sanctuary, numerous bird species can also be observed. Scenically, this region offers an ideal contrast to the bustle of Ankara. "250 kilometers further south lies a city that was the capital of the Sultanate of Rum in the 13th century. Konya is quiet, conservative, and inseparably linked with one name. The poet and scholar Rumi lived here until his death in 1273. His verses are still read worldwide, and his tomb beneath a turquoise conical roof is one of the most visited sites in the country. His teaching gave rise to the Mevlevi order, whose members became known as the Whirling Dervishes. The Sema, their ritual, is not a dance in the Western sense. The turning follows a fixed order. The right palm upwards to receive, the left downwards to pass on. The white robe stands for the shroud, the tall felt hat for the gravestone. And then that landscape which looks convincing in no photograph. Cappadocia. Millions of years ago, the volcanoes Erciyes and Hasandağ laid down a thick layer of ash across the region. It became tough, soft enough for simple tools and hard enough to live in. Wind and water wore it away unevenly, and wherever a harder basalt slab lay on top, the softer stone beneath it was protected. What remained were cones with stone hats, the fairy chimneys. People did not build on this landscape, but into it. Dwellings, stables, dovecots, storerooms, and churches were cut out of the rock. Göreme shows this at its densest, with around 30 Byzantine rock churches whose frescoes still glow. The dark church owes its name to a single small window, and it is precisely that lack of light which has preserved its paintings for over 1,000 years. Uçhisar marks the highest point in the region, a castle rock riddled with passages and chambers with a view across the entire tough plain. At Zelva, a valley branches into 3 arms that were inhabited until 1952, when the risk of collapse drove out the last residents. And at Pashabar, stand cones with 2 or 3 hats, looking like oversized mushrooms. Cappadocia is at its most impressive, though, just before sunrise. Then, in suitable weather, over 100 hot air balloons rise at the same time, drift silently above the cones and valleys, and turn orange in the first light. It is one of the largest ballooning areas in the world, and the reason is mundane. Very calm morning winds and a landscape that looks completely different from above than from below. An image of incomparable beauty and an experience like no other. Around 80 kilometers to the southwest, the Melendez has cut into the plateau. The Ilara Valley is 14 kilometers long and in places over 100 meters deep. Poplars and willows grow down below, green and cool, while up above, the steppe shimmers in the heat, a surprisingly green oasis in the middle of arid central Anatolia. Between Ankara and Cappadocia lies the country's second largest lake. And in summer, it is barely a lake at all. In many places, Tuzgurlu is only 1 to 2 meters deep. When the water evaporates, a white salt crust remains, and you can walk across it for kilometers while the horizon blurs into a line without depth. A large share of Turkey's table salt comes from here. Quite different in the south. The Aladağlar National Park protects the central Taurus, with peaks around 3,700 meters, karst plateaus, gorges and glacial lakes. A landscape of jagged ridges and wide scree fields that underlines the variety of the region once again. The route now leads north, into a region where in some places it rains on more than 200 days a year. Anyone who knows Turkey only from postcards will not recognize this region. In the west of the region lies a town that shows what Ottoman trading towns once looked like. Safranbolu sat on the caravan route north, and its merchants invested their wealth in houses. Whitewashed timber framing, dark beams, projecting upper stories, courtyards with fountains. More than 1,000 historic buildings have survived. Today, Safranbolu is known economically above all for traditional crafts and regional products. Its name comes from saffron, which is still grown here. 1 kilogram takes around 150,000 flowers, each picked by hand. Further inland, on a windy plateau, stood the capital of a great power more than 3,000 years ago. From Hattusha, the Hittites ruled large parts of Anatolia and northern Syria, and faced the Egyptian Empire as an equal opponent. After the Battle of Kadesh, both sides concluded a treaty that is regarded as the oldest surviving peace treaty in the world. Of the city, defensive walls, a lion gate, temple foundations, and a stone-built tunnel beneath the rampart remain. 2 kilometers away lies the rock sanctuary of Yazilikaya, where a procession of gods was carved into the wall of a natural rock chamber. The museum in Pamukkale complements the ruins of Hattusha with finds from the former Hittite capital. On display are cuneiform clay tablets, seals, and everyday objects that give a rare insight into life in one of the most powerful empires of the Bronze Age. Back to the coast. At Ordu, a cable car runs up the local mountain, Boztepe, from where the town curves around the bay. The hills behind are covered with hazelnut bushes. Turkey produces around 70% of the world's hazelnut harvest, most of it grown along this coast. Trabzon, for its part, was for centuries the most important port in the region and the endpoint of a northern Silk Road route. After the conquest of Constantinople by the Crusaders, a Byzantine empire of its own arose here, lasting until 1461, and thus outliving Byzantium itself. What remains is a Hagia Sophia on a smaller scale, with frescoes from the 13th century, directly above the sea. About 40 kilometers south of Trabzon, a road then climbs into a wooded valley. At some point, the wall on the left breaks away vertically, and 300 meters up, a complex of buildings clings to the bare rock. According to tradition, Sumela Monastery was founded in the 4th century and was built ever deeper into the cliff over the centuries. Inside, stairways lead to chapels, cells, and an aqueduct. The rock church is fully painted inside and out, with frescoes that continue across the bare stone. The monastery was abandoned in 1923. Since then, it has hung empty above the valley, surrounded by the mist that sits here on most days of the year. Further east lies Uzungöl, the Long Lake. A landslide once dammed a river here, and today a mosque with a slender minaret is reflected in the water, with wooded slopes rising steeply behind it. When the mist lifts in the morning, an image appears that you would never expect on Turkey's Aegean coast. From here, the journey leads east. The roads grow emptier, the air thinner, and the mountains still carry snow even in July. On the border with Armenia, on a plateau between two gorges, lie the ruins of a city that had up to 100,000 inhabitants in the 11th century. Ani was the capital of an Armenian kingdom and was called the City of 1,001 Churches. Contemporaries compared it with Constantinople. Then came earthquakes, trade routes shifted, Mongol armies passed through, and at some point, the city simply faded away. What remains is a wide field of red and ochre stone buildings, a cathedral without a roof, a round church at the edge of the gorge, a city wall more than a kilometer long. The wind can almost always be heard here, and nothing else. "40 kilometers to the west lies Kars, with an unusual layout. Straight streets in a grid, facades of dark basalt. The reason is historical. Between 1878 and 1918, the city belonged to the Russian Empire, whose administration rebuilt it completely. The region is also famous for winters with temperatures below -30 degrees. Further south lies the largest lake in Turkey. Lake Van covers around 3,700 square kilometers and has no outflow. All the water evaporates and the dissolved salts remain. The water is therefore strongly alkaline, foams when you wash in it, and was once used as a detergent. Only a single species of fish has adapted to it. On the island of Akdamar stands an Armenian church built between 915 and 921. Its outer walls are entirely covered in reliefs, biblical scenes, animals, vines, David and Goliath carved in stone. The contrast between the pale tuff, the deep blue lake, and the snow-covered mountains behind is among the finest sights the country has to offer. In Van itself lies an Eurasian rock fortress from the 9th century BC, with cuneiform inscriptions cut straight into the stone. And then there is the Van cat, a powerful white breed in which many animals have two differently colored eyes, one blue, one amber. Turkey's highest mountain stands alone. Agra Dağ, known internationally as Mount Ararat, reaches 5,137 meters, is a dormant stratovolcano, and carries an ice cap that seems from a distance to float above the plain. In biblical tradition, Noah's Ark ran aground here, and expeditions still search for traces of it today. At its foot lies Doğu Bayazıt, and above it, on a rocky outcrop, the Ishak Pasha Palace. Built in the 18th century, it unites Ottoman, Seljuk, Persian and Armenian architectural forms in a single complex. Its underfloor heating was no luxury at 2,000 meters, but a necessity. On the northern shore of Lake Van lies Alat. On a wide field stand thousands of Seljuk gravestones of red volcanic rock, some over 3 meters high, each ornamented differently. It is the largest surviving Seljuk cemetery anywhere, and looks from a distance like a forest made of stone. West of the lake rises a volcano with no summit. The Nemrut crater forms one of the largest calderas in the world, with a diameter of around 7 kilometers. Inside lie several lakes, among them one large cold lake and a smaller one fed by hot springs. Brown bears live in the wider region and are also sighted quite often at the crater itself. Please remember the name of this crater. At the end of this journey, we will meet it a second time, in a completely different place. Erzurum lies at almost 2,000 meters and is one of the highest lying cities in the country. From Seljuk times comes a medrese with 2 minarets and a portal whose stonework reigns among the finest of the era. Just outside the city lies Palandöken, the most important ski area in Eastern Anatolia, with pistes above 3,000 meters. And finally, Kemaliye, on a gorge of the Euphrates. Its inhabitants wanted a road through the Karanlık Canyon and cut it out of the rock by hand. 38 tunnels were created in the process, some only a few meters wide, with openings through which you look straight down onto the water. The Karanlık Canyon itself is also one of the most impressive roads in the entire country. The final stage of this journey now leads south, into a landscape of pale limestone and into a history that reaches back further than anything we have seen so far.
Geographically, the southeast already belongs to Mesopotamia, the land between the Euphrates and the Tigris. On a ridge above the Mesopotamian plain lies a city built in terraces. In Mardin, no house stands in front of another. Each stands above the next, so that the view stays clear from every level. The building material is pale limestone, soft when quarried, hard after years in the air, and therefore richly decorated. Rosettes, arches, bands of script, balconies. From above, the view loses itself over hundreds of kilometers of flat land as far as the Syrian border. A few kilometers outside lies Derul Zafaran Monastery, founded in the 5th century and for centuries
the seat of the Syriac Orthodox Patriarch. Prayers are still said there in a language closely related to Aramaic. 60 kilometers to the east lies Midyat, the center of the Tur Abdin, and for more than a millennium and a half, a heartland of Syriac Christianity. Its stonemasonry is considered the finest in the region, visible on facades whose ornamentation looks embroidered. More Gabriel stands here too. The Syriac Orthodox monastery was founded in 397, making it one of the oldest in the world to have been inhabited without interruption ever since. Behind pale walls lie domed rooms, a quiet courtyard, and mosaics from the 6th century. A small community of monks, nuns, and pupils lives here. A little further on, in an unremarkable village, lies one of the strangest ruined sites in the country. In the 6th century, Dara was a Byzantine border fortress against the Sassanid Empire. Beneath the village lies an enormous cistern of several aisles with high arches, into which the light falls in narrow bands. Beside it, burial chambers cut into the rock and a necropolis with wall niches. Şanlıurfa carries the epithet City of Prophets. At its center lies a pool surrounded by mosques and plane trees, in which carp crowd together fin to fin. Legend has it that Abraham was thrown into the fire here, whereupon the fire turned to water and the embers to fish. The fish have been considered sacred ever since. And with that, we have arrived at the place this journey has been heading for from the very beginning. 15 kilometers northeast of the city lies a low mound in a bare plain. For decades, it was considered insignificant, a rise with a few blocks of stone that were taken for a medieval cemetery. In 1994, a German archaeologist took another, closer look at the old excavation report. And from 1995, digging began. What came to light has fundamentally changed our idea of human prehistory. Beneath the mound lie circular enclosures of upright, T-shaped stone pillars, some over 5 meters high and weighing more than 10 tons. The decisive point is the age. The oldest building phases are dated to around 11,500 years ago. That makes Göbekli Tepe some 6,000 years older than Stonehenge, and around 7,000 years older than the pyramids. From this follows the real question. The assumption used to be, first people settle, then surplus arises, then religion and monumental building. Here, the monuments come first, built by hunters and gatherers. Only a fraction of the site has been excavated so far, and further sites from the same period are known in the surrounding area. 40 kilometers to the south, just short of the Syrian border, stands a village full of mud domes. The houses of Haran are made of conically laid brick without wooden beams, and their shape is pure physics. They keep the interiors cool even at 45 degrees. Haran is mentioned as early as the Book of Genesis, and later became a center of astronomy and mathematics, with one of the first Islamic universities, of which a distinctive square tower remains. Gaziantep is the culinary capital of Turkey, confirmed by UNESCO in its Creative Cities network for gastronomy. On the stony hills all around grow small, intensely aromatic pistachios, ground into baklava, scattered over kunefe. Both have made city known far beyond Turkey. The second reason to visit has to do with water again. The ancient city of Zugma lay at a ford of the Euphrates, and was a wealthy Roman trading center. When the tax held back the river, a large part of it computers for good. In a rescue excavation, the mastering floors were recovered and taken to a museum of their own. Today, one of the largest of its kind in the world.
And with that, back to the name we announced in Eastern Anatolia. The second Nemrut is not a crater, but a summit of 2,134 meters, and on it stands the strangest monument of antiquity. In the 1st century BC, Antiochus I ruled here over the small kingdom of Commagene, wedged between Rome and the Parthian Empire. On the summit, he had an artificial mound of fist-sized gravel piled up, 50 meters high. On its eastern and western sides, he built terraces with colossal seated statues: Zeus, Apollo, Heracles, the goddess Commagene, and himself. Earthquakes have separated the heads from the bodies. Today, the torsos still sit on their thrones, while the heads lie in the rubble in front of them, lined up, looking outwards. Shortly before sunrise, people stand here in the wind and wait. Then the first light tips over the ridge, strikes the stone faces from the side, and throws shadows that draw slowly across the terrace. What stays with you is not a single image, but the impression that in Turkey, nothing is truly past. It is only standing still, waiting for the next gaze. Thank you for watching. We hope you enjoyed today's documentary. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe so you don't miss any future videos. Until next time.